Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Watch. This is a Silurian podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to have a forum to discuss cybersecurity threats and the exciting engineering work our team is doing to stop them. There's also a forum for our partners and interested parties to engage with us and ask questions and expand understanding. Today, joining us is CEO and founder of Silurian, Vijay.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Connor. Thank you.
Okay, let's get started. Can you just give us a background to the viewers who may not know about yourself?
Yeah, I've been in cybersecurity for over 25 years now. I started off at a company called Foundstone, which was one of the OG security consulting companies. Started by a guy named George Kurtz, amongst other people. The guy that led incident response and forensics for Foundstone was a guy by the name Kevin Mandian. When Kevin started Mandian back in 2004, he called on me to start Proactive Services out of New York. And essentially, Proactive Services entailed everything that you did alongside incident response, right? So that is understanding what the threat is, how do they get in, providing recommendations on how to improve their security posture. And so that is what I started off doing at Mandiant. But even prior to that, even both with Foundstone as well as prior to that, I worked with Kevin and his team to do incident response. And yeah, so here we are.
Awesome. Can you explain your thesis for Silurian? What gap in the market did you see? What was the impetus for starting this company?
Yeah, absolutely. So at Mandiant, we did incident response for the largest enterprises, right? What we would do is we'd come in, we would deploy our technology, help understand what happened, how did the bad guys get in, what did they do once they got in, and alongside that, we would provide companies a set of recommendations on how they can improve their ability to prevent, detect, and respond to threats, right? Future threats. And for the most part, that worked, right? We, as and when we worked with large enterprises, for example, JP Morgan invested $100 million in setting up their SOC. The recommendations we would provide essentially entailed them pulling together a bunch of different tools, making sure that they had visibility across the board, and standing up a SOC with the know-how to kind of run that SOC, right? But as and when we started doing work for some of the smaller companies, I quickly realized that the set of recommendations we would make was not going to fly. Most companies did not have the budget, they did not have the know-how, they did not have the people to be able to run an effective SOC. And I felt like there was a gap in the market for that particular space. A lot of the times, those companies don't have the means to spend on technologies that give them the same level of capabilities that a large enterprise would get. And so that was always our North Star in terms of what we wanted to do.
Very interesting. It must be going well. I heard you recently won Best Cybersecurity Solution at Channel Pro Defend. Do you care to talk about that a little bit?
We're very proud of it. Right, we've been in the market for some time now. We've had plenty of opportunities to vet out our platform. We've used it to catch bad guys in real time, bad guys that were able to defeat some existing EDR solutions because of sort of our vision for the platform. The fact that we wanted to make sure we had full end-to-end visibility. We were able to detect bad guys as and when they kind of proceeded across their attack lifecycle, right? So for me, that we've had a number of opportunities to make sure that the platform kind of worked as it should and demonstrated its usefulness, right? And so incredibly proud of the team and what we've built here. And so yeah, we'll see what the future holds.
And so how is your product different from CrowdStrike and these other SIEMs and the other solutions that we presumably beat out at Channel Pro Defend? Can you talk a little bit about what differentiates us from our competitors?
Yeah, and I kind of want to step back and just talk about sort of our vision, right? While I was running incident response at Mandiant, and I'll kind of give you a little bit of history as to why it is, why we're doing what we're doing, right? While I was running incident response for Mandiant, for a company out of the Northeast, we were running IR, but at the same time, that company was kind of informing us, even though we were the lead investigators there, informing us as to what the bad guys were doing, right? So obviously, there was a gap in our approach in terms of how we were doing incident response. And essentially, they were getting intel from CrowdStrike, right? CrowdStrike had just come to the market. They deployed the CrowdStrike agents, and CrowdStrike was able to give them better visibility than us, even though we were the lead investigators, right? And so I felt like our approach was just was not as effective for situations where the bad guys were active. And so I knew, at that point that what was really needed was a platform that kind of gave us that full visibility across the board. Right? Now, the difference between our approach and that of an existing solution like a CrowdStrike, is that a lot of the times, and for the most part, it made sense, right? A lot of the times, their focus is the endpoint. But more and more, you're seeing, the bad guys adapt as well. No longer are they actually installing malicious tools to kind of run their life cycle. For the most part, they're just kind of leveraging tools that are already available to them, right? So in order for a platform to understand where the bad guys are and what they're doing, what you want to make sure is you have a platform that gives you that full visibility. And I would say that is sort of where we're different. Our vision has always been build a platform that gives you end-to-end visibility across not only your endpoints, but also your network, your cloud services, your applications, and your users. And we kind of built our platform from the ground up with that vision, right? And so for me, I think that is one primary difference. Another difference is what it is that we can do with our agents. I knew going in that we needed a platform that helped us drive investigations and that gave us the ability to go back in time that a lot of the EDR tools don't provide right now.
Mm-hmm. So that's very interesting. And so when you were building this, did you have an approach to AI or ML in your product? Was that a core product feature? Is that something you've only been focusing on in the recent years with the development and ubiquity of the transformer and the LLMs?
Yeah, it's an interesting point, right? So we have, even before Cylerion, we talked about ML models, right? Fun story, I did my research in my undergraduate back in '96 in ML, right? This is long before LLMs. We've seen sort of effective use of ML in our space for some time now, right? Cylance, which was a company founded by Stuart McClure, who was actually a co-founder at CrowdStrike, at Foundstone rather, built a platform that kind of relied solely on ML models to detect malicious behavior. So we've known kind of going, several years the effectiveness of leveraging ML in our stack. Now, where I had a different approach when it came to ML previously. For me, I was always we've kind of used ML models to do some detection. We found some success, but there was also a lot of noise, and that is true of any ML model. So for me, a better approach to security has always been make sure you have that full visibility. And when you do that, when you know exactly who has done what and why, you're less reliant on ML models to surface issues, right? If you look at sort of our space, a lot of these SIEM and log management tools have to rely on ML models, mainly because they don't have that great visibility. Mm-hmm. A lot of the times they're being fed logs from perhaps just their firewall or their networking devices. And when you don't have that full end-to-end visibility, you have to rely on techniques techniques that are better than just analytics to figure out what may be bad, right? However, I think that has changed, and even within our stack, that has changed in the last year or so. I think the first time I really my eyes open to the effectiveness of sort of the current state of LLMs to our platform was a script that our EDR came across. It was an obfuscated script. And just the ability of an LLM to decode that script in real time is what really opened my eyes.
So I would love to demo for everyone right now an example of that. Our engineers have been hard at work developing a feature that is doing exactly what you're talking about here. So I'm going to go ahead and demo that now. So if you this is our Cylerion platform. If you come over to the tickets view and view tickets, we can find the ticket that has the obfuscated PowerShell script in it. Should be under incidents. Here we.
Is it under alerts?
This is a Spear ticket. Yep. Sorry, we're just having a bit technical difficulties of tracking down this ticket.
meta.summary obfuscated.
Here we go. So right here, this is an alert for exactly what Vijay is describing, a potential obfuscated PowerShell command. As you can see here, we can open up the pipeline, and this is a data view that gets generated automatically, or data flow, sorry, that will query an OpenAI LLM, find the URL within the obfuscated PowerShell script, and then add a FortiGate firewall rule. And so we can see this run right now. This is just one example of how we're using LLMs at Cylerian to enhance the playbook or the incident response time of our partners.
And Connor, can you go back and show me the actual obfuscation?
Yes. So if we expand the record here, we can find the actual obfuscated PowerShell script right here.
Yeah, just to highlight this, right? Obviously, this is a, if typically what would have happened if an EDR or a SOC team had come across an obfuscation like this, in order to extract out the URL, you'd have had to engage with an analyst, with a reverse engineer, not just an L1 analyst, and potentially an L3 analyst. You'd have had to have a process that allowed you to kind of hand over the process to the analyst. The analyst would spend, depending on when he's available, some time to kind of decode this. Now, an analyst that has been doing this for a while can probably decode this in a handful of minutes, probably in 30 minutes. But oftentimes, especially for some of the SME companies, right, they don't have those capabilities, right? They don't have access to people that can understand what this obfuscation does, figure out what the URL is associated with it, and then quickly apply that block. Now, also, when you come across a situation like this, speed is of an essence. So you want that kind of automation in place that allows you to very quickly block the URL, right? Otherwise, if you're taking 30 minutes to respond, that is just too long, right? Within those 30 minutes, I've been engaged in IRs where the bad guys were, from when they got that initial foothold to escalating their privileges was just minutes, right? Less than 10 minutes. And so speed is of essence when you're kind of running a SOC. And so the ability to leverage an LLM to kind of run this kind of deobfuscation and quickly put a block, I think really changes the game for us.
That's awesome. So can you speak a little bit to why you decided to combine security and operations together in the Cylerian platform, and why you thought that was a core product offering and not two separate products?
Yeah, again, this goes back to sort of my days running IR for Mandiant. What we needed was an agent that allowed us to go back in time, right? That allowed us to query machines at scale, to pull in information, to pull in large amounts of data, to stream logs back, sort of forensic artifacts to our backend to be able to analyze, right? So I always knew, we needed two components. One is an agent that allowed us to query and go back in time, and a performant log management that took in large amounts of data and helped us make sense, right? An analytical data lake that allowed us to do that. And so for me, security and ops kind of go hand in hand, right? One, the better you do operations, the easier it is from a security standpoint. The more streamlined your operations, the better your ability to detect anomalies. Secondly, when you talk about security, it's really prevent, detect, and respond. A lot of the response requires you to have some operational capability, right? Whether that is deleting a file, uploading a file for further analysis, killing a process, resetting a password, all of those require you to have that operational capability, right? So in my book, they kind of go hand in hand, both to help drive IR as well as to make sure you are able to actually operate securely and makes running a SOC that much easier, right?
Mm-hmm. I'd love to demo some of those capabilities of our platform right now, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
So going back to Cylerian platform here, if we come to our assets and our endpoints, these are all the endpoints that are registered on the Cylerian platform. This is like a demo environment, of course. Some of the useful features that we have on our endpoints are remote shell access over HTTPS. This is great. You don't have to expose a port on your network. This is completely secure, and it will allow you to have remote access into your endpoint. So you can see I'm remoting into an endpoint here. We have a full shell into our Linux server here. This is one pretty cool thing. If we go back, No, they're super useful for analysts who potentially are not super comfortable with the command line, but still want to be able to view and configure stuff on an endpoint. We do also have a remote file browser. So you can pull up a remote file browser. That's what I'm pulling up here. We can see it starts in the root directory, and you can see we can traverse through all the directories of our endpoint here. If I can find a file somewhere, yep, here's like a config file. We can even view it right in the platform. So this is just a config file with a bunch of mess, but you could see this being useful if there was other files that you actually wanted to look at the data or the configuration. Vijay, do you want to showcase any other features of the endpoints?
Yeah, if you recall, I think the one thing that I highlighted was our ability to, let's talk about two kind of useful features from an incident response standpoint. One is oftentimes when it comes to threat hunting, your EDR solution or your existing security stack may not have captured the underlying artifact, right, for you to be able to analyze. So oftentimes there is a need to do that kind of threat hunting and understand and try to surface anomalies across your enterprise. So, for example, right, we built a platform back at Mandiant called Haystack that essentially allowed us to pull in some startup items and kind of run some analysis to figure out what stood out. Now, that ability is very easy within our platform. Can you pull up the live view as an example?
So operations, live view.
What we're doing here is providing you the ability to pull in over 280 different tables. We use OS Query as the underlying sensor for that. But beyond OS Query, there are other capabilities that we expose. But that ability to pull in any one of these 280 tables from across the enterprise, if you have 1,000 endpoints, the ability to pull in that information across 1,000 endpoints and do stacking and to figure out what is anomalous makes us really powerful. Can you show us an example where?
Yeah, so here I'm pulling in open processes on a given socket. So we have a bunch of information here. As Vijay mentioned, we're using OS Query under the hood. And so here you can see like the family of the process, which remote address it's using, the remote port, socket number, etc. And maybe you can speak a little bit about how this would be useful in an investigation.
Yeah, absolutely. Firstly, you saw how fast it was. Right now, imagine being able to do this across 1,000 endpoints, right? Pulling in all of the open ports and figuring out, okay, you know what, I have an IOC. How do I quickly find that IOC across the enterprise? And not just that, like running some kind of anomaly stacking in order to find what stands out is something that this the platform also helps with. Now, another feature that I would like to highlight is the ability for us to kind of go back in time and pull in large amounts of logs. Can you show the ability to run jobs from endpoints?
Yes, of course. So if we go back to the endpoints view, we go to pivots.
Before that, actually, if you can just pull up the job templates. So go to
operations, jobs. Here we go.
Yeah. So what we make available are a bunch of jobs that you can run across the endpoints. And from an IR standpoint, an example job would be pull in every authentication log going back 5 years, right? Oftentimes when you come across incidents, you don't know what the origination point was, right? You see that the bad guys deployed ransomware, but okay, how did they get in, right? In order for you to do that analysis, what you do is this kind of stacking, right? You would go back, figure out, pull in all of your authentication logs, and look for anomalies based on who's logging in, from where, if there's any evidence of lateral movement. And I've run incidents myself with our platform that's made this easy, right? Just to give you an example, we ran an IR for a company out of Boston. From when they called us to us having our stack fully deployed with agents installed everywhere, with firewall logs getting fed in, and me actually starting the engagement was 2 hours, right? And then once our agents were deployed, for me to be able to go back in time, 3 years in this case, to figure out how the bad guys got in was another hour, right? Because I was able to very quickly pull in every authentication event and quickly stack on it and see what stood out. And so that, I think that really changes the game for us. is this ability to stream large amounts of data and analyze that. Can you pull in the authentication graph? I just want to kind of highlight how fast the platform is.
Yes, the authentication graph off endpoints.
Go to events, explore events. And just search for type lib. So what we do when we run these incident, when we run IR is, firstly, just as a platform, we are streaming logs and telemetry from across everything, right? From your cloud, from your endpoints, from your network. And when we have to kind of go back in time, we basically pull in logs and we call them live response events. And what we're showing you here is an example where we pulled in authentication events, and we're providing you a visual that allows you to track sort of authentication over time based on sort of different artifacts, right? So this here is an example where we're able to very quickly kind of showcase a timeline of how users were logging in, but even further, I can kind of look at data over time and understand exactly where where the bad guy came in, right? And so at that point, IR is not periodically running sweeps. You've basically collected all of the evidence already in your platform, and you're just running queries in order to understand what may have happened, right? So it makes security just all that much more seamless and easy to run. I think that's really the power of the platform, right? We have not really pivoted from our vision of combining a performant agent with a log management data lake, and now we're just kind of bringing that to everybody, right? Mm-hmm. The SME space, but really it's available to everybody.
Awesome. So what do you think the biggest threat the MSPs and MSSPs face today is? Who are the threat actors? What are the attack vectors?
Yeah, I would say I think this is true, and I think most companies kind of highlight this, right? It's really understanding, firstly, what identities you're dealing with, what users you're dealing with, and figuring out, having that visibility to what your users are doing, right? Especially like in our world where a user is not necessarily tied to a machine that you can install an EDR agent on. You want to make sure you have that full visibility across the board, right? And so understanding what your users are doing, and then figuring out, figuring out in real time whether there is a compromise of an account, I think is sort of the biggest threat, right? And so from our standpoint, our vision has always been build a platform that helps you detect and respond, but also build a platform that helps you prevent future threats, future attacks. And I've always felt like when you're deploying an agent to an endpoint, you want that agent to do as much as possible, right? Mm-hmm. Not just do EDR, not just provide you that detection and response capabilities, but also provide you an understanding of what your exposure is, provide you the means to patch your machines. And so that's one reason why we're kind of putting in as many features into the agent, right? And so from my standpoint, it is, I think the biggest threat is, especially now in our age where users can connect to assets from anywhere, having that visibility and understanding what your users are doing, I think continues to be an area of focus.
Awesome. Thank you, Vijay. Is there anything else that the MSPs or MSSPs should know or that we should showcase in our platform here today?
I'm sure we'll have plenty of opportunities to do that. I'm excited about, firstly, our podcast. Excited about who else we can bring on. Definitely interested in hearing more from our engineering team and security personnel, right? Just talking about sort of real-world incidents and how it is that we can leverage our platform to help companies, right? What I think we might also do is kind of call on our partners to give us their perspective, and so that is something I'm looking forward to.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vijay.
Thank you, Colin.
For all our listeners out there, our plan is to run these monthly on Thursdays. We'll have a guest on each month to share more engineering and cybersecurity related news and talk about it.
Thank you, Colin.
Thank you.